Imagine an object resting in your palm. Heavy, sharp, and as large as an adult's hand. This is not a stone. This is a tooth. And its owner was Megalodon, the key to unlocking a lost chapter of planetary history, a chapter written in terror and absolute domination. The owner of this tooth was not just a creature. It was a force of nature, a shadow in the ocean longer than a bus, a living machine heavier than 10 elephants, driven by an insatiable hunger that demanded tons of food every day. Its bite was not just for hunting, but to reshape an entire ecosystem. A bite force so powerful it could crush steel 10 times that of its distant descendant, the great white shark. With such near absolute power, its territory should have been the entire planet. Its traces are found everywhere, from the coasts of Denmark to New Zealand. A relentless conqueror. So why, on this map of near-perfect domination, does a forbidden land exist? An icy continent that the footsteps of this ruler seem to have never touched. This is the core paradox, the question that has echoed through the halls of science. Why did Megalodon avoid Antarctica? The answer, as we will discover, lies not just in temperature or ice. It lies deep in the dark secrets of Megalodon's own biology, a truth we are only just beginning to grasp. Forget the image of a pumped-up great white. Science is revealing a more complex truth, a unique anatomical structure, a jaw designed not just to tear, but to crush, and a brutal, calculated hunting strategy. Because the prehistoric ocean was not a kingdom, it was a battlefield. And on that battlefield, other tyrants also rose. Mosasaurs, the sea dragon, with a double row of deadly teeth. Elasmosaurus, the long-necked phantom of the abyss, a master of the surprise strike. Each name is a legend, a force that challenged Megalodon's throne. And at Mystery, our mission is to dive deep into those murky waters, where science and myth intersect, to separate fact from fiction. Today, Mystery will reconstruct a lost world. Together, we will decipher the weakness of the strongest, expose its true face, and witness the war for the crown that shaped the history of the ocean. The journey into the heart of primordial terror begins now. Part 1. Portrait of a King. What was Megalodon? To begin this journey, to decode the deepest mysteries, we must face a fundamental yet crucial question. What was Megalodon, really? The answer begins with a concept that the human mind can hardly fully grasp: scale. So, how big was it really? Forget the great white sharks we know today. They, despite being fearsome predators, become mere pale shadows next to this ancient king. An adult Megalodon could reach an average length of over 60 feet, longer than a standard school bus. In terms of weight, it was a moving mountain, capable of weighing over 60 tons, equivalent to 10 adult African elephants combined. For a clearer comparison, let's place it in the era of land giants. If Megalodon could somehow face off against a Tyrannosaurus Rex, the famed T-Rex would look like medium-sized prey. We are talking about one of the largest, if not the largest, carnivores to have ever existed in the history of life on this planet. But to simply call Megalodon a giant version of a great white shark would be a flawed oversimplification, a common misconception that modern science is striving to correct. Its true appearance, based on meticulous fossil analysis, was far more unique and terrifying. Let's start with the head. Instead of the pointed, slender nose of a great white, Megalodon possessed a significantly shorter snout and a flatter, wider jaw. This structure created a stocky, brutish appearance, almost like a bulldog of the sea. That jaw was designed not just to tear flesh, but to crush. And to support such a massive body, nature endowed it with a crucial anatomical feature: extremely long pectoral fins. These fins acted like the wings of a giant airplane, providing the necessary stability as it glided through the water, helping it execute powerful turns while pursuing prey. Overall, this was not an upscaled copy, but an entirely different design, a biological machine optimized for absolute power. But all these impressive features served a single purpose: to power and support its ultimate weapon, the very thing that defined Megalodon's existence and legacy: its jaw. This was an architecture of destruction. When opened to its full extent, Megalodon's mouth could create a gape nearly 10 feet wide, large enough to swallow 2 adults standing side by side without needing to chew. It was a gateway to doom, a death trap that few creatures could escape. And inside that gateway was a true arsenal. Not just a few dozen, but 276 triangular teeth arranged in 5 rows. Each tooth was a masterpiece of evolution, thick, robust, and serrated like a razor's edge, perfect for sinking deep into bone and cartilage. It is from these teeth that it gets its name. Megalodon in Greek means giant tooth, but what made this jaw even more fearsome was its mechanism. Like a never-ending conveyor belt, when a tooth broke or wore down during a hunt, a new one from the row behind would immediately move up to replace it. This process could take as little as 48 hours. This meant Megalodon was always in a state of peak combat readiness, its weapons never dull. An adult Megalodon could have used and replaced thousands of teeth throughout its lifetime. And finally, we come to the invisible force behind those teeth: the bite force. The most advanced computer simulations, based on its jaw and muscle structure, have produced a number that has left the scientific community in awe. While a modern great white shark has a bite force of about 1.8 tons, Megalodon could generate an estimated bite force of up to 18.2 tons. To put that into perspective, that is 10 times stronger. It is powerful enough to crush a small car as if it were made of paper. It far exceeds the bite force of a T-Rex. Essentially, no natural armor, no skeleton could withstand such a bite. This may be the most powerful bite ever produced in the entire history of life on Earth. An unbelievable size, an appearance designed for power, and a jaw carrying absolute destruction. This is the true portrait of the king, a nightmare of flesh and cartilage that once ruled the oceans of our planet. And this is just the beginning of its story. All the hidden secrets will be revealed right after this. Part 2. Lifestyle of a Titan. How did Megalodon live? To maintain a colossal body and be hailed as a mobile hunting machine, Megalodon required an enormous amount of calories. Scientists estimate that each day it had to consume about 2,500 pounds of food. To put this number in context, imagine this. That is equivalent to devouring nearly 2 beef cows every day. Or if converted to a human diet, it is like having to eat 3,300 cans of tuna in just 24 hours. A study in the journal Science Advances went even further, estimating that the volume of Megalodon's stomach could reach nearly 2,600 gallons. In theory, it was large enough to hold a modern-day orca and digest it over several days. This hunger was the driving force behind its every behavior. So, what was the main menu of a titan? The answer lies in the fossils of other giants: whales. During Megalodon's era, the oceans were home to many species of small to medium-sized whales, such as Cetotherium, a type of baleen whale about 13 to 16 feet long. They were a rich source of fat and protein, making them ideal prey for Megalodon. The evidence is not just speculation. Around the world, paleontologists have found fossilized whale bones bearing deep gouges, clear slash marks that match the serrated teeth of Megalodon to the millimeter. These are the scars of history, telling the story of brutal hunts. But what truly separated Megalodon from other predators was not just its strength, but its tactical intelligence. It was not a mindless predator that just charged in and bit. It was a strategist. Unlike modern great white sharks, which often launch surprise attacks from below, targeting the soft underbelly of their prey, Megalodon seems to have employed a different, more brutal and effective method. With a jaw designed to crush even hard bone and cartilage, its first strike was often not aimed at the body. Instead, it targeted the flippers and tail of the whale. Imagine a scenario. A single bite with 18 tons of force could shatter a pectoral fin or completely disable the prey's tail. In an instant, the giant whale would lose its ability to swim away. It would be paralyzed, helpless in the vast ocean. Only after disabling its prey's propulsion system would Megalodon leisurely deliver the final, killing blow. This was not a hunt. It was a calculated execution. With such a lifestyle, Megalodon's empire could not be confined to a single sea. It was a true global ruler. Its fossilized teeth, the irrefutable evidence of its presence, have been found on every continent except Antarctica. This indicates that it was a warm water shark, thriving in the tropical and subtropical seas of the world, where food was abundant and the temperature was suitable. And like many sharks today, Megalodon also had its own nurseries. Scientists have identified shallow coastal waters in places like Panama, Maryland, the Canary Islands, and Florida as nursery areas for young Megalodon. These shallow waters provided relative safety from larger predators lurking in the open ocean, and also had plenty of smaller prey for them to practice hunting on. But do not let the word nursery fool you. Even a newborn Megalodon was a giant in its own right. Researchers believe that at birth, a baby Megalodon was at least 6.5 feet long, longer than the average height of an adult man. It was born to hunt, born to dominate. A colossal hunger, an intelligent hunting strategy, and an empire stretching across the warm oceans. That is the picture of Megalodon's life. But any empire, no matter how great, has its limits. And it is in those limits that we will find the clues to its inevitable downfall. Part 3. The Fall of an Empire. Why did Megalodon go extinct? A creature at the top of the food chain, a hunting machine honed to perfection by millions of years of evolution, an empire stretching across the warm oceans of the planet. But Earth's history always teaches us a harsh lesson. No reign is eternal. And the story of Megalodon's fall is one of the most tragic chapters. How could such an absolute ruler vanish from the Earth? The answer lies not in a single event, but in a perfect storm of global changes, a chain of dominoes where the first clue, ironically, lies in the one place it never set foot: Antarctica. The question, why did Megalodon avoid Antarctica, is not just a geographical curiosity. It is the key to unlocking the fatal weakness, the Achilles heel of this giant. Megalodon did not fear Antarctica. It was biologically incapable of surviving there. Modern science classifies Megalodon as a mesotherm, a regionally endothermic creature. It could maintain a body temperature higher than the surrounding water, a huge advantage that allowed its muscles to work harder, digest faster, and hunt more effectively in tropical seas. Think of it as a high-performance engine. But any high-performance engine requires a specific type of fuel and an ideal operating environment. For Megalodon, that environment was warm water. The biological reactor inside it, though powerful, was heavily dependent on the ocean's temperature to function optimally. In the frigid waters of Antarctica, where temperatures can drop below freezing, maintaining the body heat of a 60-ton creature would have consumed an unimaginable amount of calories. Its reactor would have to work overtime just to keep from freezing, let alone hunt. Antarctica was not a forbidden territory because of another monster, but because of the unshakable laws of physics and biology. This very dependence on warmth became Megalodon's death sentence when the world began to change. Around 5.3 million years ago, the Earth entered a period of global cooling known as the Pliocene epoch. This process did not happen overnight, but was a slow, irreversible shift. Large amounts of the planet's water began to be locked up in the ever-expanding ice caps at the poles. This large-scale ice formation had a direct and devastating consequence. Sea levels worldwide began to drop, and as the sea receded, one of the most important strongholds in Megalodon's life cycle was erased: its coastal nurseries. Remember, the shallow, warm waters of Panama or Florida were where young Megalodons grew up, relatively safe from larger predators. As sea levels fell, these havens gradually turned into shallow swamps or dried up completely. The young no longer had a refuge. They were pushed out into the open ocean earlier, a much harsher environment where they had to face adult predators and fierce competition. The survival rate of the next generation plummeted. The foundation of the Megalodon empire began to crumble from its youngest members. At the same time, the cooling of the planet disrupted the warm, tropical corridors that Megalodon used to move between oceans. Ocean currents changed, creating cold water barriers they could not cross. Megalodon populations became isolated, reducing genetic diversity and the species' ability to adapt. But the most devastating blow was yet to come. A king cannot survive if his kingdom has nothing to eat. Climate change not only affected Megalodon directly, it completely destroyed its food chain. As the oceans cooled, the distribution of microorganisms and phytoplankton, the foundation of all marine life, also changed. This caused a ripple effect up the entire food chain. The medium-sized baleen whales, Megalodon's preferred prey, were heavily impacted. Some species could not adapt and went extinct. Others, like the ancestors of modern humpback and blue whales, found a new opportunity. They evolved to become larger and began to undertake long migrations to the polar regions, where the cold waters were teeming with nutrient-rich krill. The result was a tragedy for Megalodon. Its prey either disappeared or migrated to places it could not follow: the icy seas of the Arctic and Antarctic. The lavish banquet that Megalodon had been accustomed to for millions of years suddenly became empty. The giant began to starve, and while the old king was weakening from hunger and cold, a new challenger appeared on the scene. Smaller, more agile, and much more versatile. The ancestor of the modern great white shark. While Megalodon was a whale hunting specialist, the great white was a generalist predator. It could thrive by preying on smaller marine mammals like seals and dolphins, which in turn flourished in the new marine environment. The competition became most intense at the most basic level of survival. Young Megalodons, forced out of their vanished nurseries, now had to compete for every scrap of food with adult great white sharks. It was an unequal contest. On one side, inexperienced young of a declining giant species. On the other, the efficient apex predators of a rising new one. The outcome was all but decided. Global cooling, the disappearance of nursery habitats, the collapse of the food chain, and the rise of a more efficient competitor. It was not a single cause, but a perfect storm that slowly suffocated Megalodon's existence. Science believes the last Megalodon took its final breath around 3.6 million years ago. Its reign was over. So, is there any chance that a few individuals survived, hiding in the depths of the Mariana Trench, as many still believe? The answer, based on everything we know, is a biological impossibility. The Mariana Trench is an extremely cold environment, with crushing pressure and, most importantly, almost no food source large enough to sustain a 60-ton warm-blooded creature. Megalodon was a product of warm, shallow seas. Putting it in the abyss would be like putting a lion in the vacuum of space. The empire had fallen. The throne was vacant. Silence fell over the ocean. So, in your opinion, in that perfect storm, what was the final blow that finished off Megalodon? Was it climate change, constant hunger, or competition from newcomers? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you find this decoding journey interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Mystery Channel so you don't miss our next adventures. Megalodon's throne was left vacant. But do not be mistaken that the prehistoric ocean had become peaceful. Because while the Shark King was fading away, a completely different lineage of rulers, those not of the fish family, were still at the height of their power. Their story is about to begin. Part 4. The other apex predators, mosasaurs, the T-Rex of the sea. To meet the other tyrants, we must take a journey even further into the past. A journey to a different era, long before the first Megalodon tooth sank to the seabed. We go back to the Cretaceous period, about 85 to 66 million years ago. This was a world where the continents were shaped differently, and a shallow, warm inland sea, called the Western Interior Seaway, split the North American continent in two. And in those waters, it was not fish, but reptiles that were the absolute rulers. Meet Mosasaurus. If Megalodon was the uncrowned king, then Mosasaurus was the recognized tyrant, a creature worthy of the title T-Rex of the sea. This title is no exaggeration. The largest known individuals could reach lengths of over 50 feet, making it one of the largest marine predators of its time. But to truly understand the terror of Mosasaurus, we must look beyond its size. We must dissect this war machine. Its body was a masterpiece of convergent evolution, borrowing the best traits from many different species. A long, hydrodynamic body, propelled by 4 powerful flippers, allowed it to make deadly sharp turns. But its main weapon for speed was at the back. A massive tail, with a final lobe that evolved into a shark-like crescent shape. This structure allowed Mosasaurus to generate explosive thrusts, turning it from a leisurely patroller into a living torpedo in an instant to ambush its prey. And its head, a bone-crushing machine with a skull nearly 6 feet long, looked like a crocodile from hell. But the real secret, the weapon that put it at the top of the food chain, lay inside. Unlike any living reptile today, Mosasaurus possessed a brutally cruel anatomical feature, a second row of teeth. In addition to the hundreds of sharp, conical teeth on its main jaw, it had a secondary set of teeth, called pterygoid teeth, that grew backwards on the roof of its mouth. Their function was horrific. Once Mosasaurus had caught its prey, the main teeth would hold it tight, while the secondary teeth would act like hooks, pinning the struggling victim and slowly pulling it deeper down its throat, neutralizing any attempt to escape. In addition, its jaw, like that of a snake, had a loosely jointed structure. It had an extra joint in the middle of the lower jaw, allowing it to open its mouth to an extraordinary width to swallow prey nearly its own size. And its diet is the clearest evidence of its status as an apex predator. Perfectly preserved stomach fossils of mosasaurs have revealed a terrifyingly diverse menu. Scientists have found remains of large fish, sea turtles with crushed shells, flightless seabirds, and even other marine reptiles like plesiosaurs and smaller mosasaurs. This shows that Mosasaurus was not a specialized predator. It was the ultimate opportunist, an indiscriminate eating machine. Anything that moved in its territory, from the surface to the shallow seabed, could become its next meal. It was the definition of dominance in a world with no room for weakness. A reign built on brute force and a biological design almost perfectly suited for predation. Tylosaurus, the living battering ram. But the Mosasaur dynasty did not just have one type of tyrant. If Mosasaurus was the emperor with comprehensive power, that family also produced specialized warriors, machines designed for a single purpose. And one of the most fearsome was Tylosaurus. Its name, which translates to knob lizard, sounds gentle, but that is a deadly deception. This was a cousin of Mosasaurus, another giant predator up to 42 feet long. But if Mosasaurus's hunting philosophy was seize and swallow, then Tylosaurus's was much simpler and more brutal. Ram and destroy. The key difference, the weapon that shaped its entire lifestyle, was its snout. Unlike other mosasaurs, the snout of Tylosaurus was a hard, solid block of bone, toothless and protruding forward from the jaw. It was not a sensory organ. It was a living chisel, a built-in sledgehammer. And it used this weapon with horrifying efficiency. Imagine the attack scenario of a Tylosaurus. It would charge at its prey with the speed of a torpedo. But the first strike was not a bite. It was a head-on ram. An impact with the full weight of a multi-ton body concentrated on a single point. The force of this ram could cause severe internal injuries, break the ribs of an ancient sea turtle, or simply stun a large prey completely, turning it into a helpless target, suspended in the water. Only after the initial strike had neutralized the victim would the deadly jaw behind it do the rest of the work. It was a two-step tactic. First, pure brute force, then the finishing blow. The evidence for this tactic is not just speculation. Paleontologists have found fossils of other marine creatures, like plesiosaurs, bearing healed wounds, depressions in the bone that perfectly match the shape and size of a Tylosaurus snout. These are the scars of survivors, telling the story of failed but violent attacks. Tylosaurus was the embodiment of concentrated violence, a living arrow shot from the darkness of the prehistoric ocean. It did not need the complexity of 2 rows of teeth or loose jaw joints. It needed only one thing: speed and an unstoppable impact. Mosasaurus and Tylosaurus represent a dynasty of brute force, an era where dominance was decided by devastating bites and direct assaults. They were the conquerors, the tyrants of the ancient shallow seas. But power in the prehistoric ocean did not only come from muscle. It also came from unbelievable hunting strategies, from body designs so bizarre they were absurd. And in the next part, we will meet those rulers, the long-necked phantoms, the masters of the art of the ambush. Part 5, the strategists and the gentle giant elasmosaurus, the ambush hunter. Power in the prehistoric ocean did not only come from jaws that could crush a turtle shell or charges like a divine hammer striking the sea. Amidst that world of fangs and speed, there existed another current of dominance, quieter, more sophisticated, and dangerous in its own unique way. A school based on cold patience, perfect camouflage, and a body design that surpassed all laws of nature. Look at Elasmosaurus, the bizarre jewel of the plesiosaur family, a predator that leaves even modern paleontologists in awe. It was unlike any creature that had ever appeared in the ocean. At first glance, Elasmosaurus looks like a joke of creation. A body as large as an overturned boat, 4 giant paddles stroking the water rhythmically for balance, and in front, a head so small it seems like a design flaw. Yet, connecting that tiny head to the massive body was the weapon that made it a legend. We are talking about a neck that could be up to 23 feet long, accounting for more than half of its total body length. To achieve this, the skeleton of Elasmosaurus broke all records. While a human, or even a giraffe, has only 7 cervical vertebrae, Elasmosaurus had up to 76. This number is more than any other known animal. For decades, scientists were baffled by the question, why such a long neck? Early illustrations often depicted it with a flexible, snake-like neck, or soaring high above the water like a mythical swan. But modern science has debunked those images. The muscle and bone structures show that the neck of Elasmosaurus was actually quite stiff. It could not bend arbitrarily, but moved more like a long, controllable crane. And it is in this controlled rigidity that the secret of its hunting strategy is revealed. Elasmosaurus was the embodiment of an ambush hunter. It did not chase its prey. It let the prey come to it. Imagine the scenario. The massive body of Elasmosaurus could hide in the deep, murky water, or simply maintain a safe distance. To a school of fish or a shoal of squid, that giant shadow was too far away to be considered a threat. And then, from the darkness, something small and unassuming approached. Just a small head, not much larger than the prey itself. The fish remained unguarded, but they had made a fatal mistake. That head was just the tip of the iceberg. Once in range, the 23-foot-long neck would act like a living fishing rod, launching the head forward with incredible speed. The small but sharp, needle-like teeth would interlock, trapping the prey before it even knew what had happened. This was a tactic of absolute deception. The hunter hid 90% of its body, using only the smallest part to approach, turning its greatest weapon into a tool of invisibility. In addition, the long neck allowed Elasmosaurus to sweep a large area for food without having to move its entire heavy body, helping it conserve precious energy. Some scientists even suggest it might have used its neck to forage on the seabed, picking up shelled animals like ammonites. And to support this lifestyle, Elasmosaurus had another secret in its stomach: stones, or gastroliths. It actively swallowed pebbles, some up to 5.5 inches in diameter, for 2 main purposes. First, they acted as a mill, helping to grind up hard-to-digest food like shells and fish bones. Second, and perhaps more importantly, they acted as ballast weights, helping it control buoyancy and stabilize its body underwater while the long neck was on its hunting mission. Elasmosaurus is proof that dominance in the wild does not only come from strength. It comes from adaptation, from unbelievable evolutionary solutions. It was a strategist, a phantom of the abyss, a master of the art of waiting. Styxosaurus, the sea serpent of the past. In Greek mythology, there is a river named Styx. It is the boundary between the world of the living and the underworld. a dark, cold body of water that even the gods feared. And in the prehistoric ocean, there was a creature that bore that name, Styxosaurus. It was not a mythical monster. It was completely real. But when you look at how it lived, how it hunted, you will understand why that name is so hauntingly fitting. If elasmosaurus was a mobile fortress, a living crane, then Styxosaurus was a phantom. It was also a long-necked plesiosaur, but creation had stripped away the bulk, replacing it with a design that prioritized sleekness and efficiency. Its body was relatively smaller and more elongated, giving it a silhouette like a giant sea serpent undulating through the murky water. It did not dominate by size, but by presence. A predator you would not see until it was too late. Its philosophy was not ambush from a safe distance, but dissolving into the environment itself. Imagine it gliding through deeper waters, where sunlight was just faint, flickering rays. Its slender body did not cast a distinct shadow. It was just a faint curve, a slight disturbance in the current. And to master those deep waters, Styxosaurus performed its own dark ritual. Like its cousins, it also swallowed stones. But in Styxosaurus, this act had a deeper meaning. It was not just for digestion, it was a commitment to the abyss. By swallowing pebbles from the seabed, it deliberately increased its body weight, turning itself into a biological submarine capable of diving deeper and maintaining perfect stability in the dark. It gave up lightness in exchange for mastery of the deeper water columns, where prey would never expect a threat to come from above. And from that darkness, its neck, nearly 13 feet long, would strike. Not like a crane, but like a striking snake. Fast, surprising, and absolutely precise. The conical teeth interlocked, forming a cage of needles that no fish or squid could escape. Styxosaurus was not the strongest, nor the largest, but it may have been the most efficient predator, a ghost of the past that turned the laws of physics into a weapon and bore the name of the river separating life and death. It is proof that in the struggle for survival, sometimes the most fearsome is not the one that roars the loudest, but the one that glides in silence. Shastasaurus, the unexpected giant. We have journeyed through a landscape of terror. We have faced the crushing bites of Megalodon, the brute force attacks of mosasaurs, and the deadly ambush tactics of the plesiosaurs. The story of the prehistoric ocean seems to be written only in tooth and claw. But natural history is always full of paradoxes, unexpected chapters that can completely change how we view a lost world. And now, it is time to meet one of the greatest paradoxes. Let me introduce Shastasaurus. And when I say this was a giant, that is an understatement. Living in the late Triassic period, about 210 million years ago, Shastasaurus was the largest marine reptile that ever existed. Scientists estimate the largest individuals could reach lengths of up to 70 feet. Let that number really sink in. 70 feet. It was longer than Tylosaurus. It was longer than Mosasaurus. It was even longer than the average Megalodon. In terms of weight, it could have weighed over 75 tons, comparable to a modern blue whale. If you stood it on its end, it would be as tall as a 7-story building. When its first fossils were found, the scientific world was ready to welcome a new super predator, an apex hunter that would redefine brutality. With such size, they imagined a monster that could swallow other dinosaurs whole. But when scientists reconstructed its skull, they found something inexplicable, something completely illogical. Shastasaurus had no teeth, or if it did, they were very small and weak. Its skull was long and slender, its snout narrow, and its jaw extremely fragile. It had none of the structures of an apex predator. This was not the jaw for crushing turtle shells or tearing apart a plesiosaur. So what did this mountain-sized creature eat to survive? The answer has completely rewritten our understanding of the ancient marine ecosystem. Shastasaurus was a gentle giant. Scientists believe it was a suction feeder. Like some modern beaked whales, it could have rapidly expanded its throat cavity, creating a powerful vacuum to suck soft-bodied prey into its mouth. Its diet consisted not of other rulers, but of the small, humble creatures of the ocean. Small fish, and especially cephalopods, like squid and ammonites. It was a giant vacuum cleaner of the sea, gliding slowly, peacefully, collecting small meals to power its massive body. Shastasaurus is a reminder that in the natural world, biggest does not always mean fiercest. It is a testament to the incredible diversity of life, that even in an age of tyrants, there was room for gentle giants to exist. It is the greatest surprise of the prehistoric ocean, a monster that was not a monster. And so, our journey through the prehistoric oceans comes to an end. We began with the fall of a king, only to realize that even the mightiest empire can be vanquished by the irreversible changes of nature. We dive deep into a world where dominance came in many forms. We witnessed power that came from brute force that could crush anything. Power that came from intellect and bizarre adaptation, lurking in the dark to wait for a moment. And even a surprising power that came from gentle greatness. Each creature was a philosophy of survival. Each dynasty a different answer to the eternal question: how does one master one's world? The dark secret of these tyrants, perhaps, was not their brutality, but the incredible diversity in how they defined power. So, in your opinion, which form of dominance is the most fearsome and respectable? Is it the absolute power that can level all obstacles? Or is it the patient intellect, a hidden strategist waiting for the right moment? Share your philosophy with us in the comments below. And if you believe that every fossil holds a great story waiting to be told, please like and subscribe to the Mystery Channel. Because the journey to uncover the mysteries of the past has only just begun. The empires of the past have fallen, but the ocean remains. And the laws that shaped them are, perhaps, still silently at work in the abysses we have never known. Thank you for watching,